Hey guys, welcome to my vlog and happy Australia Day. I'm going to go with a bit of an Australian theme today, talking about a few things that I think are somewhat relevant to Australians and covering a few sort of different things. So the first thing I wanted to mention was there's a lady called Melanie Joy who's written a book called Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs and Wear Cows. And so the book is based on the Carnism theory, which is a theory about why we love some animals and value them in and of themselves, whereas other animals we only value because we believe they have a purpose to meet our needs. And so she goes into the whole, animal consumption industries and how it's become culturally acceptable to, say, eat bacon or ham or beef, but not, in our culture at least, eat dog or cat. And she talks about how the reason it's become culturally acceptable is because people think it's normal, they think it's natural, they think it's nice, it tastes nice or whatever, but they also believe it's a necessity. And if you've watched my earlier videos, hopefully you've come to an understanding that that's absolutely not the case. And actually the opposite is true, that if we consume these products it's detrimental for us on both a physical and an emotional level. So I'd recommend you check that book out if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that whole philosophy and why we consider some animals important and others simply not. And certainly on Australia Day, when we're all, patting our dogs and treating them as man's best friend while we're barbecuing the lamb chops and the prawns, start looking at that little juxtaposition and inquire into that a little bit more deeply and see what comes up. So that's just one sort of topic I thought I'd bring up today. The other one, which is sort of along the same lines, is a little bit to do with the belief that many people seem to uphold, that Australia is this wonderful magical country where all farm animals are treated humanely, and all of those horrible things that you see going on overseas, all of that really harrowing, awful footage that occurs in other countries couldn't possibly happen here. There's no way that animals get treated like that, or those kinds of things happen in slaughterhouses. And as a vet, I've obviously been exposed to a number of different animal production industries, both in my training and in my initial years after graduating and working in a farming area. And so I can absolutely tell you that those kinds of things do happen on our shores. One example would be when I was still a student and I did a prac up in far north Queensland, and I had to assist with a live animal export loading onto a ship. So live cattle were being exported on a ship overseas to be killed under, halal circumstances or something over there for the meat industry there. And that's a really big trade. It generates a lot of money. And these animals were under extreme stress. It was such a traumatic experience for them and for me to see what they went through just in the loading part of their experience. So the people that tend to load the animals onto those ships have absolutely no animal husbandry experience at all. They're just ship people. And so they were using those electric prodders like every 3 seconds. They were jabbing an animal in the butt to try and get them to move faster and to load well onto the ships. And there was no sort of understanding of how animals move in herds and how to sort of get them to move more safely and more peacefully. That just wasn't even considered. They were all jabbed with vaccinations as they were loaded onto the ship, and then they were put into really, really kind of like there was a huge amount of cattle loaded onto this large ship, so they were just jammed into a tiny space where they couldn't move around. And from my understanding, they had no access to food, or very limited access to food and water for the entire duration of the trip as well. So that's one thing that I was exposed to during my studies. Another thing that is certainly prevalent in animal production industries all over the world is the inherent waste that happens with the egg and the dairy industries, and I've talked about that in previous videos. How baby male calves particularly and baby male chickens have no value, no economically viable use within the industries that have generated their lives, and so they are simply discarded. So baby male chicks that are sexed at day old are put down like a mincer and ground up live, and male dairy calves that are of no use to the veal industry just get knocked on the head within the first 3 days of life. So that's another thing that absolutely does happen on Australian shores, and none of this is saying anything about the farmers themselves. You know, farmers do what they have to do in order to meet the requirements of their industry with their understanding of what is, you know, part of that whole system. And so a lot of farmers do treat their animals really well, and they uphold high standards with regards to the, you know, trying to meet the animals' 5 freedoms and keeping those animals in sort of humane production systems. But a lot of the production systems that we have are inherently inhumane. So that's just the way that the systems are going, because people's demand for animal products like pork and meat, other types of meat, and dairy and eggs has all been rising over a number of decades, and so obviously supply has to meet demand. The industries become more intensive as a result, and then things just get more and more difficult when it comes to meeting the animals' needs. So I guess one other thing we should talk about with regards to Australia being this magical country is then people think, oh well, I'll just eat seafood, you know, fish is a really healthy option, and we have these wonderful magical waters where there's no contaminants, and you know, fish is going to be a healthy food source for me. It's not. Our oceans are the same oceans that circulate throughout the entire globe. All of the oceans on our planet are highly contaminated these days. They're basically like a toxic soup. They're full of plastic breakdown byproducts. They're full of dioxins and heavy metals, and most of those contaminants get more concentrated the higher up the food chain you go, so they bioaccumulate. So a large predator fish like a tuna is going to have a much higher concentration of contaminants in its body tissue. When you eat that animal, then your body has to do something with all of that toxic load, and I talked about that a little bit in the fat loss video. So our waters aren't these magical pure waters. You know, you can see evidence of that with the disaster that's happening with the Great Barrier Reef. So that's just a belief that needs to be dropped. We do live in a magical country. I'm so blessed to live in Australia. I think it's a wonderful place to live. We have an amazing climate. We have an abundance of food. Where we live particularly, there's incredible local fresh food sources available to us all year round. And we have a high standard of living. There's not a lot of extreme poverty. Our working conditions are generally quite good. You know, there's a lot of aspects of living in this country which are beautiful and wonderful, and I really do value and treasure where I live. But when you think about the animal production industry and thinking that none of that horrific stuff happens here, you need to be realistic and you need to wake up, and it absolutely does. And so, you know, this afternoon when you've got your dog at your feet and you're treating them like man's best friend while you're pulling into your bacon and egg burger or your snags or whatever it is that you like to partake in on Australia Day, just try and think about that on a deeper level and see whether that really does align with your deep truth and the compassion and empathy that is within us all. And if it doesn't, maybe next Australia Day or tomorrow, even better, make a different choice.